Don Chen, the president of the Surdna Foundation in New York City. I'm delighted to be joining you today. The mission of the Surdna Foundation is to foster just and sustainable communities in the United States, and we've long recognized that to achieve social justice in the US, we really need to focus on race. The Surdna Foundation was established by John Andrus, who was a very successful investor and businessman. He started the foundation with contributions in 1917 and subsequently from his estate in 1934. The endowment has grown to over $1 billion, and that is where the money comes from. Now I'd like to introduce Shweb Siddiqui. Shweb?
Hello, everyone. I'm excited to be here. My name is Shweb Siddiqui. I'm the Director of Impact Investing at the Surdna Foundation.
Shweb, in your work, you often talk about how you approach risk and how you challenge us to think differently about risk, whether it's investment risk or social impact risk. You even talk about uncompensated risk. And so tell us more about how you think about risk and how foundations should approach that challenge.
When I started at Surdna, when we look at the specific issues around the racial income and wealth gap that exists in the United States, estimates are over the next 20 years, Black and Latinx households will go to net zero household wealth. And at the same time, Black and Latinx will represent 40 to 50% of the US population. How do we use this capital to get into those communities to enable wealth creation and income creation? So when I think about our PRI portfolio, if we don't take these financial risks to help entrepreneurs of color or fund managers of color get off the ground, who will? Who will do that work? So that's one way that we think about it. But I also think about impact risk. If we're not taking impact risk, we're not actually creating change, because we have to be willing to take risks on new systems that may not work, that may not enable the impact that we're looking to create. And if that's the case, we as a mission-driven organization can say, yes, this may have been financially successful, but the impact we were looking to create did not come to fruition. And again, I go back to, if we as an institution are not willing to take impact risk, I'm not sure who will. It's incumbent on us to take impact risk. And also with our PRI portfolio, I talk about uncompensated risk. You know, investing in a first-time fund manager, there's a lot of things that can go wrong. The way I love to describe it is we've taken her, the fund manager, tied both hands behind her back and said, make it work. Even if she's hugely successful, we will never be compensated for a first-time fund manager who's managing a $10 million fund, right? Just as a reminder, $10 million fund is considered subscale in the venture capital world. On average, a first-time venture capital fund of, again, a traditional white male investor would be around $50 to $100 million, right? This is starting at 10. When we go to our MRI portfolio and investment graduates, we've reduced those risks. We've proven that that fund manager can be successful, that that fund manager is now raising a $50 to $80 to $100 million fund when it's sitting in our MRI portfolio. So as I think about each of these risks, whether it's financial, impact, or this uncompensated risk, as it graduates into the different pools of capital, we reduce those risks. Ultimately, when it sits in our endowment, we can say to the world, we've proven that this can generate benchmark competitive returns. We've proven that this can create impact. But we have to go and help enable that to happen.
You've been here for 5 years, and you have implemented a strategy, and we're just now starting to see some of the results. You know, you talk about risk, we've taken some risks, but we've also seen some returns. So far, we seem to be doing pretty well. I'd like you to talk about that.
We have been doing well, and it's really, really exciting. But I also don't like to get overly excited, right? One, just looking broadly, we're in a market cycle where we've seen huge amounts of success, even in the traditional investing community. Our endowment, for example, has hit highs that we've never seen before. When we did our last annual review with our board and the investment committee, it was great. We were able to show the financial returns we were generating. We were able to show the impact that was being created. But I also wanted to manage the expectations that we will enter a downward cycle and that will have consequences. The goal for us as an institution is staying the course. That's why the discipline and the focus matters.
Shweb, you often talk about influencing capital markets. Why is that so important for a foundation like ours?
We don't have the luxury to wait around for long-term systemic change. Black and brown households are suffering every single day as they're slowly moving to not generating wealth. If anything, they're generating negative wealth as each year passes by. And so when I think about our impact investing, it is a short to medium term strategy. Our grant capital, if you think about it, is really creating the change and enabling the change that will happen over a generation. But our investment capital is enabling the here and now, one. And two, to enable the here and now beyond $100 million, beyond $1 billion, is really influencing the $65 trillion. And so how do we get that capital to move and create change? And again, who's willing to take that risk to enable that to happen?
Leads me to another question about the things that you have overseen that have really demonstrated success. What are some examples?
Of the last 4 investments that we've closed, right now, those investors are in conversations with other institutions to raise capital. For me, that's exciting that we are viewed by our peers as a credible thought leader. People look at the investments we're making.
It's bittersweet for me to say this, but your time at Surdna is coming to an end because you're moving on to a wonderful opportunity. As you take a step back and reflect on your experience at Surdna, what are you most proud of?
It's the risk-taking. Right? When I joined Surdna, one of the first things that I realized when I looked at philanthropy at large, philanthropy is extremely risk-averse. And then when you bring impact investing into the conversation, people again become even more risk-averse. And one example of that is a lot of foundations will do low-cost debt. And low-cost debt is great, and there's a need for it. I don't want to say that it's not needed. It's needed. But that's not the only need of capital that exists to create social change. We've comfortably said we're going to operate at a different end of that risk spectrum because we believe that that is equally important. We're going to build a rigor and discipline around it. We're going to build process around it that now other institutions see our work as, okay, these guys are laying a flag and maybe we can come after and we can learn. To me, that's the most exciting thing. And I think that my hope is that Surdna continues that drive to risk-taking.
If you were to look ahead 10 years and think about what you would hope to see in the field, what would that look like?
So what I would say is, one piece of it within Surdna, for example, and this is part of our board and investment committee has always been thinking about this, is that we recognize by investing in fund managers of color and entrepreneurs of color that they can generate benchmark competitive returns, if not generate alpha. That diversity is a good thing. It is the mainstreaming of that idea is what I think is important.
Fantastic. Well, on behalf of the Surdna Foundation, and just from me personally, I want to thank you for all of your time at Surdna and your friendship, and I wish you well in the future.
And Don, thank you for having me. It has been a great 5 years. I want to thank both the board, the investment committee, yourself, Mark Devinoge, our VP of Finance, who really enabled me to create this portfolio. If it wasn't for the community around me, I wouldn't have been able to achieve this, and that support was critical in our ability to develop and implement this strategy. So I want to thank all of you as well.